Yesterday, we discussed the conclusion of former Major League Baseball player Trevor Bauer's lawsuit stemming from an alleged sexual assault and Bauer's recent video in which he released his side of the story with receipts. Joining me now to discuss that is Bauer's accuser herself, Lindsay Hill. Lindsay, I mentioned Bauer's video in which he provided some receipts that, I'm going to be honest with you, make you look like a clout chaser, or I know some people are calling you a cleat chaser because admittedly you were chasing after several high-profile, wealthy baseball players. Trevor says everything was completely consensual. He also released these text messages that came out in court indicating that you had planned the whole thing out. So I want to read some of these texts from you to a friend between the two of you before you met Trevor, this one. Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. Okay. Victim is an interesting choice of words. I'm going to allow you a chance to explain yourself. But after you agreed to meet, you asked your friend what you should steal. Your friend answered his money. He says, another one from you to a friend, I'm going to his house Wednesday. I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll. With a screenshot in which you told him, tryouts don't scare me, Bauer. Pick a day and I am there. Here are some more after you and Trevor met up. Net worth is $51 million, to which your friend responds, bitch, you better secure that bag.
If y'all don't think that it's important for you to be able to have a level of dick discipline in order to prevent yourself from getting caught up with these chicks, and more importantly, that they're not just color specific, that is happening all the way across the board, and now this guy got to spend possibly millions of dollars, his reputation is damaged, all because a chick is trying to set him up. This is crazy. I'm telling you, y'all need to protect yourself from the lowest all the way up to the highest. If you think it's just about the fact that if you're single or you're married and you should be able to do whatever it is that you want to do when you want to do it, it's not the case.
Your text, need daddy to choke me out, being an absolute whore to try to get in on his $51 million. You say this wasn't a setup. How can you expect anyone to believe that?
That's a great question. I really appreciate you having me on to even have this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot going on around this, so I really appreciate people who are asking questions about it. The first thing I want to say is, I think that Trevor did this intentionally with the text messages and how he framed this video. There's several things in it that are not correct. And I just want to start out by saying, it's so valid for people to question those text messages. But the root of the problem here is that he is presenting this as one conversation, when in reality he had thousands of messages to choose from, took those, made it look sequential, which it was not. There is no combined screenshot of those things going on one after the other. And as I said last night as well, there's no text message that ever exists. Otherwise he would have, put it out there, combining, anything about a setup through rough sex, finances all in one. Those were handpicked.
A setup is a setup. I don't care what you say. I don't care how you try to frame it. And the fact that these people don't even take an accountability and they think that they're justified in being able to accuse you, which is one of the reasons why I say that I don't just inherently believe all women. As a matter of fact, I don't believe any woman. I think that if this had been 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, in which we don't have technology to be able to pull up the things that people said in order to hold them accountable, but she's still not being held accountable because she's still an accuser instead of being the person that's on trial for trying to ruin somebody's career.
And they were from multiple different conversations all before we met up. And I think that the video in general doesn't even talk about what actually happened between us two, which is what would have come out during a jury trial. These were all messages that happened before. And then, of course, the video is so valid as well for people to ask questions about. But I do think that video was entirely misleading. He also references the restraining order hearing, which people also have questions about. He says that he was cleared of any wrongdoing, which is actually incorrect. In our civil case, the judge had actually ruled that he had not been cleared of any wrongdoing, and that was a federal court judge.
And just to be clear, civil case means that she's suing, civil meaning money, in order to continue to, AKA, secure the bag.
Okay, so I want to get to the domestic violence restraining order hearing as well, but I mean, so you're saying that it's misleading because you're admitting that you did talk about rough sex and wanting rough sex. You did talk about him needing to choke you out. You did talk about stealing his money, but it's misleading because he put them together in the same video as if you had said it in the same conversation when in fact it was separate conversations, correct? That's why it's misleading?
Correct. And as well as not showing, the messages that occurred after where it discusses it strictly in the term of, being a baseball wife or something like that.
This is crazy. So they not even really even scared to bring their face on here, have a conversation, or hide it anymore. It's just 100%, yo, let's get it in, let's rock out, let's do what it is that we want to do. Yeah, I said it, it's just in the wrong context, and see, he's wrong about that, and the civil court case and all of that. Man, if y'all don't start protecting yourselves and being very, very careful about who it is that you open up your household to, that you then stick your rod in and all of that, because everything is scary. It's getting scarier by the day because they feel comfortable and they think that just because, she got some blonde hair and some highlights or whatever and some makeup on, that justifies how it is that she's trying to finesse. And sometimes y'all also marry these women thinking that just because they look a certain type of way, that justifies you being able to do it instead of vetting effectively. No loyalty, no love, all just transactional and looking at you as a come up.
Or something like that. Okay. I'm just curious if you know, like, the statistical likelihood of you texting your friend premeditated texts saying you wanted him to choke you out and steal his money, take his money, and him actually choking you out, and those two things not being related.
It's a really, really valid question. And like I said, I think you would need to look through each conversation. Those were handpicked.
No, we asking you right now.
I said last night, completely own
We're asking you right now, face to face. And you just admitted to it.
the fact that those were overly sarcastic, overly inappropriate to some may seem. And it does give off that impression about clout chaser and totally attention-seeking behavior. But I just feel that they have, nothing to do with what actually took place. But it does cause a lot of questions as to why I was, seeking Trevor out. But at the end of the day, there was nothing about a setup with violence and all of this stuff and getting financial gain. It was strictly, a 25 or however old I was at the time, girl trying to get attention from those things and phrasing it in a sarcastic way before we met.
Okay, so I've got a couple other questions on that. So you said in court that he sexually assaulted you on 2 different encounters, and you say the first time that you say he choked you unconscious. Clearly the insinuation is you didn't like it because now you're calling it an assault, but why did you make the drive back to LA to meet back up with him a second time if this man had just assaulted you by your own account?
Right.
I think that's a really good question, how I phrased it.
agree.
I hate when people say, oh, that's a really good question, because A, they buying time in order to try to think about a response. B, they not answering a question directly because they want to kind of throw you off. And then C, it's just a disingenuous thing to try to say that, oh, that's a really good question. You don't think it's a really good question, and you absolutely despise the fact that she asked that question and that she's grilling you. But let me see how she responds.
In the past is that I was so embarrassed by the first encounter that I felt something, deep in me to go and take the power back and to be better and to be what he wanted in a sense. And so I don't know. There's been a lot of, through all the processes, witness experts on the psychology of what happens when you are assaulted, XYZ. But there was something in me that felt like I needed to make it better in a sense.
Okay. But you texted Trevor before you met him, telling him you liked rough sex. Then you texted him after your first sexual encounter with him, which you now call an assault. And according to court records, you told him after that sexual encounter that you had, quote, never been more turned on in your life. That's not really something that someone says when they were just assaulted.
I think it's a super valid question. Everything you're asking me is a super valid question.
I agree. That's why I'm asking them.
Totally. And I think that I'm not, that's what expert witnesses are for in court in terms of the psychology behind that and responses to abuse and things like that. But like I said, I was just trying to make myself feel better about myself after what had happened the first time. After the first time I left without any markings on my body, my face was fine. I could go to work. And I thought that the second time, would be like the first time minus the things I told him I was not comfortable with.
Yes.
Yeah, listen. Here's the conclusion. And I'm going to deep dive into this a little bit more on the Millionaire Morning Show. So we're going to go through the whole thing, and then I'm going to also play his response because I'll have a little bit more time to do so. Protect yourself. Please stop trying to vet for, because this can happen to anybody, regardless of whether you're married or not or whatever. All you have to do is be in the wrong place at the wrong time with the person that has the wrong objective to then finesse you. They're willing to destroy your career, the very thing that you work for your entire life. Men need to be very, very careful. And again, until we start to change the laws to start to hold people accountable, they should resolve. They should abstain themselves from even entertaining a lot of these women in the first place. And I can understand why a lot of guys say, well, I'm going to move on and I'm going to go to a completely different environment, so on and so forth. Because again, it's not conducive, especially when you incentivize people to be able to take advantage of you just because you are a public figure or just because you have money. Be careful, strap up, and do not allow yourself to continue to get finessed. Make them sign a consent agreement, put them on camera, tell them to put their cell phones down, also make them sign a non-disclosure, so on and so forth. And it's unfortunate that we got to continue to go through this, but if you want to continue to protect yourself and you understand that you're going to go up as you continue to become great, then you have to. You have no choice, or to just resolve to not even participate in the first place. Come on, man. We're going to kick it on the Millionaire Morning Show. We're going to have a conversation about this. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I love you. I appreciate you. Make sure you get that Teach Hanley 30% off your first order plus a free gift. I'm out.